Monday, September 9th. We're gathering as a committee of the whole. I would ask everyone rise and please join me in a pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Spencer, if you could call the roll to establish a quorum, please.
Gutenkopf. Here. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin. Absent. York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Conquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner. Here. 13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. On to announcements. Agenda item number 2. Anybody have any announcements at this time? Mr. Grabowski?
I have nothing, thank you.
Alderman Deuter?
I would like to announce that Alderman Gutenkopf and I are going to have a meeting for the First Ward, for any interested First Ward residents to get input on both the Han Street developments and the Addison development on Tuesday, September 17th from 10 to 11:30. The meeting's going to be at the library in the meeting room on the first floor, and all First Ward residents are invited.
Great. Is there anybody else with any announcements at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, that's public comments. This is an opportunity from anybody in the audience or anybody in the public to offer any public comments, ask any questions, not necessarily get answers, but certainly we welcome your comments. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes. If you do approach 3 minutes, we'll let you know. And at this time, Clerk Spencer, is anybody signed in for public comments this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one person that signed in, Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street.
Ms. Sullivan, you know the drill?
I do. Good evening. Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. With regards to all of the development that we'll be discussing over the next few days, please keep in mind where will the stormwater go. It's critically important. This is a neighbor to my very own neighborhood, as well as really all of Elmhurst shares the same sewer system. It's already overcrowded, so we really need to keep in mind what we're going to do with it, and as well as any funds we're going to spend if we wouldn't have them available for other items. So please keep that in mind, and if developers have previous experience with the city and with regards to stormwater, you ought to keep in mind what that experience is as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Spencer, anybody else?
That's it, as far as who signed in.
Is there anybody else in the audience who would like an opportunity to speak who did not have an opportunity to sign up on our sign-in sheet earlier this evening? Nobody? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. The reason why we're here, the Han Street RFP applicants. Couple of things to set this up. We issued an RFP. We received 5 RFPs that at least qualified for review. There was a random drawing done by city staff. We've elected to review in consideration of committees earlier tonight. We're reviewing 2 of those tonight, and then tomorrow, when's the meeting tomorrow? Is it 7? 7 o'clock tomorrow, we will start up again and review the remaining 3. We did send out a notice to the presenters, letting them know that when, on what day, what time they would be presenting. We asked that the presentations be limited to 45 minutes. We did allow the applicants to choose how long they want to make their presentation and how long they want to make their Q&A. So someone may present for 40 minutes and have 5 minutes remaining for Q&A. Someone may present for 20 minutes and have 25 minutes for Q&A. That's really up to the presenter. In an effort to be fair to everybody, we're going to strictly enforce the 45-minute time limit. We have 2 tonight, Morningside groups at 8 o'clock, and the Jupiter Realty group is at 9. Mr. Grabowski, is there anything you would add at this time?
No, sir. I believe everybody's here and is ready to go.
Okay. Assuming everyone's okay with it, we'll start with the first applicant. We're gonna time this. Please introduce yourself, and when you're done, we'll push go.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Pittman, and I am a vice president at Morningside Group. On behalf of the entire North District team, I would like to thank the mayor and the city council for this opportunity to present tonight. Given the limited amount of time that we have to present, we'd ask that you hold your questions till the end. I've been with Morningside Group for over 12 years and have worked on the company's previous developments in Elmhurst. Not only have I worked in Elmhurst, but I grew up in town and recently moved back with my husband to raise our children. Brian Pollock is the Vice President of Development for Morningside Group and moved to Elmhurst in May with his wife and his children. As residents of this community, Brian and I have both a personal and professional stake in this development. David Strasberg is the president of Morningside Group and has long been a champion of Elmhurst. His belief that Elmhurst is a great place to live and do business has propelled him to develop multiple residential communities in town. Morningside has been a member of the Elmhurst Chamber for over a decade and frequently sponsors chamber events. David has supported economic growth in Elmhurst for many years and hopes to continue to do so. Before I move on to the other members of our team, I'd like to take a minute to discuss Morningside's history with this site. Morningside has been intimately involved with this site since the original RFP was issued back in 2006. We had the foresight to recognize the importance of the Pauley Station parcel and to secure the rights to this property. We elected to sign over those rights at the request of the city, but Morningside had this property under contract for 6 years. There is no other group that you will hear from that has expended more time, money, and energy in understanding the maximum potential for this site. And as a result, there is no other group that is better suited to redevelop Hahn Street. In an attempt to clear up any misinformation out there, I'd like to mention that Morningside elected to withdraw its original proposal and terminate the redevelopment agreement we had on the site as a result of the deteriorating condominium market and nothing else. After the redevelopment agreement was signed in 2008, it became clear that a for-sale multifamily project was not viable given the current market conditions for condos. As a result, both the city and Morningside agreed that additional time was needed to figure out the most appropriate direction for the development. So here we are today to present our new proposal. Morningside believes that North District will be a landmark building in Elmhurst. We have assembled the area's most reputable consultants to assist in our efforts. Mark Sella from MDC Properties is our retail consultant. Rich Clowder from DLA Piper is our legal consultant. And Mark Hopkins from HKM Architects is our architect. Terra Consulting Group is our engineering firm. KLOA is our traffic consultant, and Lobby Companies is our TIF/economic development consultant. I'd like to introduce Mark Sella, our retail consultant and broker for North District. Mark brings a level of expertise to Elmhurst that is unparalleled. Mark has done more transactions in downtown Elmhurst than any other broker. Morningside's had a relationship with Mark since his parents purchased a condo from us in 1998.
Thank you, Melissa. I formed MDC Properties, my company, back in 1988 for the express purpose of developing small office and retail projects in the western suburban downtowns of Chicagoland. My first project was a small office building in downtown Glen Ellen. My second project was a small retail building in downtown Glen Ellen, both from the ground up. Since then, I've purchased existing buildings, renovated and leased them, and developed from the ground up. My smallest project is the Hinsdale train station, about 3,400 square feet. The largest project is Springbrook Prairie Pavilion, a 300,000 square foot LEED certified gold shopping center in Naperville that, with my 4 partners, including myself, we developed a lead anchor tenants of Whole Foods, Nordstrom Rack, and Dick's Sporting Goods. About 20 years ago, I met Willis Johnson, owner of the York Theater, when we were both competing for a development opportunity in the same town. We decided to combine our forces, won the assignment, but the project was never actually assigned or awarded. Since then, I've worked with Willis as his leasing agent on his retail spaces in the western suburbs, including the York Theater block, where I've leased all of his retail spaces over the past 20 years, which adds up to about 50,000 square feet of retail. At North District, we envision retail users ranging from 1,000 to 5,500 square feet in each of the 2 retail spaces that bookend the Civic Plaza. We're going to target restaurants, ones that will make good use of the outdoor dining areas, clothing stores, specialty gift shops, and limited service-oriented retailers that serve the apartment residences and the public. We'll make all the retail brokers in the marketplace aware of the development, encourage them to bring their clients to Elmhurst, and pay them market rate leasing commissions. We're very excited about the retail potential at North District and look forward to bringing more solid retailers to downtown Elmhurst. David?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Alderman. I'm David Strasberg, founder and president of Morningside Group. I know many of you are familiar with our company, but some of you are new since our last presentation in 2011. I understand that in a public-private partnership, having confidence in your partner is critical. So allow me to present the 2-minute story of our company. This year, Morningside Group celebrates its 20th anniversary. Through our 20-year history, the company's focus has been almost exclusively on mixed-use and multifamily development on suburban infill sites, and those mostly in suburban downtowns. My personal resume includes 40 years of experience in building design, construction, development, across a wide variety of property types. Our company is well known for its track record of doing what we say we're going to do and maintaining the highest ethical standards. Our corporate culture puts a high value on responsibility to the local community and personal integrity. The company's motto is distinguished by design. The very top priority of our team is enhancing the built environment. We strive to make every project a landmark for its community, and we are absolutely confident that North District will be a landmark for Elmhurst. We're architects, engineers, construction managers, and housing specialists. I'm a licensed architect with a degree in real estate and architecture and urban planning. Brian's a civil engineer. Melissa is a housing urban development specialist. The company is vertically integrated, meaning we do everything from conceptual design through building construction, through property management and leasing, and we do that all in-house. We can maintain quality control that way and keep the highest standards. Most of the buildings I show you tonight in the Chicago area were constructed and managed by Morningside Group. Morningside Group has a stellar reputation with lenders. We've never defaulted on a loan, even through the past 5 years of the real estate recession. We've never given back a property to lender. We've never had a foreclosure. Lenders are eager to participate in Morningside projects due to our spotless track record. We're builders with a long-term vision to invest in communities. We're not just looking to build the next project, sell it, and move on. We build for our own account, meaning that we're not beholden to some third-party institutional investor or corporate office. Since we're not merchant builders and we build to own ourselves, we don't cut corners for short-term gain. We're willing to invest that extra dollar because we know we'll have to deal with this building for many years to come. All the projects you see here tonight and presented in our written proposal are Morningside development projects, not the projects of our architects or other third parties. All the projects were completed by the current principals of Morningside Group and not any predecessor companies or predecessor principals. Let me go through a few images on the screen quickly. In the upper left-hand corner is Wheaton 121, which I'm going to spend some time talking about in a few minutes. In the upper right-hand corner is a redevelopment, mixed-use redevelopment that we did in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was a redevelopment of a historic factory building along with new construction. This project had a lot of technical issues, but is generally regarded as the best luxury building in the Ann Arbor market. Lower right-hand corner is Museum Square. You're all familiar with that. It was a public-private partnership with the city. Lower left-hand corner was Crescent Court, another public-private partnership with the city of Elmhurst. In the upper left is a building that's kind of prototypical of the suburban mid-rise building that we've completed in many suburban downtowns around Chicago. Downers Grove, Glen Ellen, Des Plaines, Evanston, Skokie. On the right-hand side is an example of a mixed-use development that we did in Royal Oak, Michigan. We maintain an office in southeastern Michigan. The first phase was a Barnes & Noble, along with multiple national retailers. Second phase, in the lower right-hand corner, included ground floor retail, parking, and multifamily above that. Morningside's business plan is not just about ground-up development. We also acquire existing properties, one of which that we did a gut rehab on is on the left in the center, and that was 252 units that we acquired during the depths of the recession and did a complete repositioning of the project from what it was, a blight on the community, to a successful repositioning as a mid-priced rental property on the North Shore. In the upper left-hand corner is the 105 South York building. Many folks in Elmhurst don't realize that Morningside renovated the 105 South York building and put Cafe Amano in place. Melissa Pittman invested months of her life in the bowels of that building trying to figure out and ultimately replacing all the mechanical and electrical systems in that building. The remaining sides on this page show a public-private partnership that we did in southwest suburban Oak Lawn, the redevelopment of an old tired strip of single-story shopping buildings was undertaken to create a downtown for Oak Lawn. And this redevelopment included 6 new buildings. Upper right-hand corner, you see one of the 4 spec buildings that we did, 2 retail, 2 residential. We also, on the bottom 3 images, are public buildings that we created for the village. A new train station, new parking deck, and a children's museum. HKM Architects, who the architects for North District, was also the architect on this project, and Brian Pollock was the project manager. Okay, Wheaton 121. Before we present the details of North District, I want to talk about ultra-luxury housing. I want to change your assumptions about rental housing. Living in an ultra-luxury building today is almost like living in a resort hotel year-round. You'll see in a moment that I'm not exaggerating. We've designed North District to be the premier rental building in the area. The lifestyle and amenities of North District will be beyond any rental building ever constructed in Elmhurst or its surrounding suburbs. Please keep in mind that a rental building hasn't been constructed in downtown in over 20 years. Tremendous unsatisfied demand exists for high-quality luxury rental housing. So despite our projected monthly rental rates of $1,400 to $2,700, we expect robust demand. On the screen, you see Morningside's 306-unit ultra-luxury building in downtown Wheaton. The finishes and common area amenities of North District will match this building, so I want to spend a few minutes showing you what living there is like. The first 10 occupancies in Wheaton 121 occurred just last week, and final completion is set for year-end. Here's the lobby. It's a light-filled 2-story space, just like we've planned here in North District. Note the finishes and furnishings, which include a waterfall and a fireplace. On the right side is a coffee bar where residents can pick up coffee and a pastry on their way to work. Our goal was to replicate a 5-star boutique hotel lobby, and I think We succeeded. Located off the lobby is the on-site leasing and management office. Open 7 days a week, Morningside's team of property managers and leasing agents operate the property at the highest standards. Morningside Properties won the prestigious Property Excellence Awards from the Chicago Land Department Association for both 2011 and 2012. Wheaton 121 is up for multiple awards this year. Behind the scenes, our full-time on-site maintenance staff attends to common area building maintenance and completes repair requests. We fix the clogged toilet and repair the dripping faucet inside your home. That's not the resident's responsibility as in a condo. The result is a true maintenance-free lifestyle. If you have a second home or you travel frequently, you can turn your front door key, walk away, and forget about it. Here's the green courtyard in Wheaton, which is very similar to the one planned for North District. This one's over 2/3 of an acre and chock full of amenities. You see the heated pool and sun deck. At North District, a pool is only envisioned in the 6-story version of our plan, but both the 4-story and 6-story versions have the sun deck. The other amenities in the courtyard include grilling stations and an outdoor kitchen. 2 bocce courts are adjacent to the pool. The building is pet-friendly and includes a fenced dog run. See that right there? There's also a dog washing station in the garage. Management organizes regular events in the courtyard during warm weather, including movie screenings and Margarita Fridays. Traditionally, in suburban multifamily buildings, there's not much interaction among residents. You see your neighbors only on the elevators. That's not the case in these ultra-luxury buildings. In the summertime, the courtyard is like a neighborhood park with residents gathering to swim, sunbathe, and grill. Here's another view of the courtyard. In the foreground, you see the fire pit. Fire pit adds months of utility to the green courtyard. The community room is an important part of the social aspect of the ultra-luxury resort-style building. Have you ever been upgraded to the concierge level or club level of an upscale hotel? Our community room is a larger version of that. The community room has furniture for lounging, a fireplace, multiple TVs, reading material, and free Wi-Fi. A social alternative is offered versus sitting in your apartment. The community room contains many entertainment choices. In addition to the pool table there, we have game tables with special tops for poker and bridge, which the residents really use. The community room can be reserved by a resident for a special occasion. Instead of your party guests messing up your home, your party guests can now mess up our community room. But we do collect a cleaning deposit for parties. The community room also contains a fully equipped catering kitchen. Outside the community room is a business center with 3 computer workstations and a printer. Wheaton 121 has a screening room that seats up to 20. Residents can reserve the room to watch a Saturday afternoon football game with their college buddies, or just reserve it for movie night with their significant other. On football Sundays during bear season, management sponsors football parties here with soft drinks and snacks. Next to the screening room is a business conference room that seats 10. For those with a home business or involved in charitable endeavors, the conference room is very popular. My personal favorite amenity is the fitness center. This is not your typical condo or hotel fitness center with a couple of broken down treadmills and a few free weights lying on the floor in the corner. Now, this is much more. It's a real health club. And we made sure that residents could give up their gym membership because nearly everything anybody can want is located right here. Here's our Pilates, yoga, and spin room. We have a video system to guide you through your own workout, or you can attend the scheduled classes for Pilates and yoga with a live instructor. Now that we looked at the common areas, what do the apartments themselves look like? Here's our two-bedroom model. Every home has 9-foot ceilings. Every home has individual gas forced air heating and air conditioning. Every home has outdoor space, either a balcony or a terrace. Every home has its own washer and dryer. Every home has lots of closets, large storage area in the garage. Every home has faux wood floors in the living room. An acoustic engineer is a member of our consulting team and makes sure that floors and walls exceed acoustic standards. No apartment is ever soundproof, but we make sure they're very sound resistant. Our kitchens are spectacular. Real wood cabinets with 42-inch uppers, stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, glass tile backsplashes, refrigerators with ice makers. The entire finished package is condominium quality. You should be aware that one of our future strategies for both Wheaton 121 and North District is conversion to condominium. When market values improve to the necessary level, the condo conversion strategy becomes viable. Okay, the reason we're all here, North District. Before Mark Hopkins with HKM addresses architecture, I need to present the configuration and organization of the building. Okay, here's the site plan. North is up, York Street is to the right, Addison Street is to the left. Since you've seen our written material already, you know our concept appears simple, but it's really rather complicated, and the pieces fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. I credit HKM for creating this ingenious plan and refining it over the years. The most ingenious building plans are often deceptively simple. Our basic concept is a 4-story building with a lower level. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. The lower level contains resident parking in yellow, and the purple is a stormwater detention vault under the plaza. Let's go up to the ground floor. Fronting York is the retail space in brown. The retail space bookends the Civic Plaza in green, and hidden behind the retail and the Civic Plaza are 113 public parking spaces. Note that there are 3 access points to the public parking spaces: the North Alley, the South Alley, and Hahn Street. We're maintaining the location of Hahn Street until we pass the townhomes, which use Hahn Street as their egress point for their garages. Fronting Addison Street on the ground floor are residential uses, and we've included a large setback on Addison Street so that the townhomes, we match the setback of the townhomes to the south. Let's move up to the second floor. On the second floor, there's a courtyard, which is over the top of the public parking. And then the residential units surround the courtyard on the second, third, and fourth floor. As requested by the RFP, we've set back the fourth floor by 125 feet so that we maintain only a 3-story presence on Addison. Note that our alternative concept proposes a 6-story building. The only configuration difference from the plan I just described is that these blue floor plates go up another 2 floors, and resident parking is added to a portion of the second floor to maintain the same parking ratio. Now Mark Hopkins of HKM will discuss site planning and architecture.
Thanks, David. David described how the building is going to block and stack on the site, and what I'd like to do is tell you how it's going to be perceived and felt. The North District's designed to be the gateway to the north portion of the downtown business district, and it extends the existing retail core from south of 3rd Street and will be a catalyst for future development, redevelopment, and improvement as it moves more north. So it needs to be a good neighbor too and enhance the character and quality of the existing business district, and that happens with contextual massing, architectural style, and quality materials. And even though the overall design is 2 blocks long, about 330 feet on York Street, it's broken down into a series of masses that has an appropriate softness of scale. Along York Street, 2 one-story retail components define a central civic people space and pavilion, and the retail buildings are in front of the parking deck, as David described, with the retail residential units above that. So that 4-story portion of the building, or 6 in the option, is set well back from the street. The residential floors are broken into 3 major pieces, you can see, with the changing brick color, as if they were 3 zero-lot line buildings with the central structure pulled back from its neighbors. All the building parts make use of very high quality and long-lasting materials designed to look great and fresh now, but also to stand the test of time so that decades in the future, the materials will still look good. And just as important, the historicity of the designs and the materials and the detailing don't get dated, but instead will be perceived as being timeless and part of the context of historic Elmhurst. Also note that the residential building wall panels are only 1 or 2 rooms wide in the overall facade treatment. This is important in establishing a residential scale and softness for visual interest and for shadowing. The contextual overall design theme and detailing are drawn from and are intended to be harmonious with the historical architectural character of Elmhurst. Now, the parking is invisible from the street, but it's intuitive to use and it's easy to find. Gateway arches are on the north and south at the alleys, and they direct people into public parking, and the garage entries are directly behind the retail. Once the shoppers parked, they could walk out of the structure through pedestrian portals by the garage doors where they came in, but more likely, they'll want to walk directly out onto the Civic Plaza, where there are 2 major pedestrian portals. The 1-story scale of the retail buildings is further broken down by facade bounce, that is, the movement front and back of the facade, and varying roof heights in order to be friendly to the scale and the rhythm of the smaller scale of the existing components in the downtown retail district that exists south of 3rd Street. The retail walls are cast stone with accompanying coursing, banding, and texture articulations, bracketed eaves and cornice trims, all to set the theme of high caliber retail. Residential building behind forms a backdrop, but it doesn't overwhelm York Street. And planters are located in front of the retail that are alternating with bollards along York Street to provide a buffer and provide a psychological safeness and a gracious space for pedestrians to move along York Street, so the buildings are not too tight to York Street. This is the Civic Plaza. Those planters and pavers bow in at the center of the plaza to lead you into this, the centerpiece of the design. It's a multi-purpose people space designed to look and feel right, whether it's empty or filled with a crowd. And it's designed to encourage people to both pass through and linger in the space. A performance pavilion is centered on a lawn flanked by curbed planting beds, and behind it are green walls on the edge of the parking deck. The green walls are vertical walls of living plant material that allow filtered light to come into the shopper parking that's behind it. Pedestrian portals access the shopper parking at the northwest and southwest corners of the plaza. And on the north and the south ends of the plaza, you can see a sidewalk that leads to those portals, outdoor dining areas in front of retail storefront. Planter walls in the plaza area are designed as seating walls, and those face the lawn and the pavilion, and on a nice day, folks could sit in the lawn and eat lunch or read in the grass. Tree canopies and building shadows allow for both shady and sunny sitting, and combined with the benches and outdoor dining, the plaza space invites passive activity even when no events are occurring. The tower element is meant to be a conservative, iconic architectural element, a center to the project, with a higher bracketed roof and stone-trimmed arched windows, and is set off-center in the symmetrical space as a counterpoint to the pavilion. And opposite the tower, on the other side of the center line, is a metal-clad box bay.
Mr. Hopkins, I'll give you a courtesy time check. You're at right about a half hour, and you got about 15 minutes left.
15 minutes left. I will speak quickly and truncate some of this. This view helps you describe how the streetscape's going to look to the person that's walking along York Street, moving south and coming in and approaching the civic space from the north. Might help explain why the tower element was placed on the south center of the plaza. Retail buildings, as I said, were pulled back to provide adequate space for those planters, and a gracious walk to about 17 feet back from the property line, or about 20 feet back from the curb. It gives us enough for a nice sidewalk, the planters, and so the user doesn't feel like they're right up against York Street. Orbiting around to the Addison Street side, this view is looking back towards the southeast. Here the building is held to 3 stories, as David said, and the design team elected to hold it back for a setback that is approximately that of the townhomes, within a couple of feet. Large setback allows for walks, lawns, and plantings that make for a comfortable transition from street to building. And on Addison Street, there's a garage entry, as you know, on a Hahn Street cut, but there are no new curb cuts anticipated as part of the project. We use the Hahn Street cut to access the deck, and on the Addison side, as on the York Street side, the parking is completely out of view. All the elements on the Addison Street side need to be scaled and treated in a friendly way to the nature of Addison Street. And here's where the 2-room wide limit to the continuous wide wall surfaces becomes even more important to the success of scaling of the project. Now, the centerpiece of this wing is the residential entry. Now, this is a corridor building, but the units on either side of the residential entry are treated like row homes, with individual first-floor entries that you can see sidewalks leading up to, and fences that create yards. Divided light windows are used in single and double groupings, arched windows and flat cast stone lintels and arched lintels, herringbone brick in the decorative spandrels. Some of the windows have transoms you can see on the first floor and over the entry. Other details include eave brackets, more metal box bays, and all to blend with the historic traditional character of the street, neighborhood, and city. The common residential entry to this building is located in the center there, and it's announced with the change of brick color, the fabric awning, and small masonry ground sign, so as to blend seamlessly into the character of the street. David?
Thanks, Mark. I want to talk a little bit about the retail building and point out a few things. And we're going to skip over a portion of our presentation. Morningside wants this building to become a community landmark and an attraction for residents, as well as the requested spider web to attract travelers on North Avenue. Investment in high quality and enduring materials is essential to achieve that landmark standing. And that investment is significantly larger than we could otherwise plan. But the investment is essential to achieve your stated goal for Hahn Street. We're using cast stone where brick walls would be less expensive. We're using pitched roofs and eaves where flat roofs would be less costly. We're using stone arches and stone sills, where brick lintels and brick sills would be cheaper. But the materials and details that Mark Hopkins discussed make a difference. The palette of rich and enduring materials will be appreciated by generations of Elmhurst residents, because we're not just building for today, we're building for future generations of Elmhurst residents and visitors. This shows the iconic tower element. Note that we've invested in traditional materials and details again. And these traditional materials and details have significant cost. But we value these historic references as critical to reaping the desired community reaction to the building. The goal is a significant structure that personifies the aspirations of this community for its downtown. A little bit about the Civic Plaza, and it's really a gem in the rough, and it's a space that all the other spaces revolve around. You know, should this space have a pavilion for concerts and performances as we've shown? Should it be designed for a weekly farmers market during warm weather and ice skating in the winter? Should it be a venue for public art and contain a fountain? Should it be something else completely? We look forward to meeting with stakeholders to discuss the ultimate design of this important plaza. Community input is essential to maximizing the utility of this space. The green courtyard is over a half acre. What you saw in Wheaton is nearly identical to what we plan here. Quickly go through this. Addison Street, Mark talked about in detail, so I will skip over that. Just wanted to talk about the alleys briefly, and not a very sexy subject, but we've provided 3 loading zones for the building, 2 on the north alley, 1 on the south alley. And we've also set back the building from both of the alleys because there is insufficient width in that alley currently. And in order to create the loading zone and have sufficient driving space, we need these setbacks. Brian?
Given the time constraints, I'll go quickly through the next few slides. All the elements shown are further detailed in our proposal. North District will include many pedestrian features Mark mentioned earlier: benches, LED light bollards, and pedestrian scale light fixtures. Our plan not only emphasizes the pedestrian experience, but contains many bike-friendly features such as exterior bike racks, bike storage for residents, and bike sharing. Morningside development philosophy emphasizes sustainable design, construction, and operation. In the interest of time, I'll skip through these, but these are all detailed in our package. Stormwater management. Stormwater management is an important component of our design. As we all know, stormwater management is a concern for Elmhurst as well as neighboring communities. We're planning to install a storm detention vault below the Civic Plaza to collect stormwater and slow its entry into the public storm sewer system. Permeable pavers will be utilized in and around the Civic Plaza. We will install a rain cistern to collect rainwater for reuse and irrigation. The main courtyard will feature a vegetated green roof system, and we will feature throughout the project an erosion control program to mitigate stormwater downstream. Accessibility. Accessibility is another important aspect for our design. Morningside, of course, the project will be code compliant or regulatory compliant, but we also approach the project with a design philosophy to make the building intuitively useful for the greatest number of people possible. With that, I turn it back over to David for some closing remarks.
Okay, so why should you select Morningside for this assignment? As I close the presentation, let me offer some reasons. Our team has shown you an outstanding design, and this is the same design that was in our written materials. And this building will become a landmark in Elmhurst. This design meshes perfectly with the character of the downtown. We cut no corners in the materials and details. It will be a spectacular gateway for Elmhurst. Our team has current experience with mid-rise, ultra-luxury infill projects in suburban Chicago. We know the construction cost of this building type from our ongoing projects. We won't come to you 2 months after we sign a redevelopment agreement and say, yeah, we're way over budget, what do we do now? The Morningside team, including all of its consultants from top to bottom, have worked together previously and completed some successful projects together. We're not strangers to each other, and we don't need time to work together to figure out the kinks. We'll hit the ground running. Morningside has worked previously with your city attorney and city staff. I believe we've developed tremendous goodwill and mutual respect. We're always going to be straight with you. We welcome creative ideas and look forward to collaboration, but we won't be afraid to tell you when an idea won't work. We will always operate with the best interests of Elmhurst as a priority, just as we did with the Pauli contract. We will not propose concepts or prospective tenants that don't have a chance of ever happening and make everyone look bad later on. We won't create unrealistic expectations by suggesting that we can bring an Apple store or a second-level retail space just to make the sales tax projections look good. We've had years to consider every detail of this site. There shouldn't be any surprises for us. We have an outstanding construction management team coming off of Wheaton 121. They can quickly, when you're ready, start demolition of the existing building and start digging foundations in the spring. We fully understand the site's environmental condition and what's required to satisfy the Illinois EPA and obtain closure. Our team has already spent months resolving environmental issues on. We know this site. We're best able to get this project started quickly, opened quickly, and paying a return to the city quickly. You minimize the risk of a false start with us. You can rest assured that each and every one of us are professionally and personally committed to make North District a phenomenal success. This is the right plan at the right time with the right developer. Thank you for the opportunity and look forward to questions in the remaining time.
Thank you, Mr. Strasburg, and your entire team for your presentation. We'll see how many questions we can get in about 2 minutes. Is there anybody who has any questions that would like to? Alderman Deuter, you have a question for the Strasburg team?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is about the retail. Thanks very much for the proposal. My question is about the retail or the experience that your team has managing rental housing.
Yes, we've let me get back to this slide here. I was going to try to get to the beginning of the slide, but we have completed multiple rental properties, Des Plaines, Highwood, Wheaton. There are 3 recent examples in the past 3 years alone that we've completed, and we manage all 3 of those properties.
So about a 3-year track record of rental.
We've done some previous rental in the past, and have there's a couple of buildings that we've done that have some units that were rented, but as far as 100% rental, those 3 examples that I just gave you over the past 3 years are large scale ones.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Anybody else? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. It'll be 2 parts. One being the retail space.
Yes.
In both proposals, it's approximate, or it is the same amount of retail space, a little bit over 11,000 square feet. Correct. First part of this question would be why that amount of space? For my liking, I would like to see more than that for retail because the city lives on sales tax. But the other piece of that, in your documentation, you mentioned that the parking for the retail would be coming out of the parking garage. Is that true? And if so, why is that necessary?
Okay, I'll answer your first part. The roughly 11,000 square feet was determined We felt that that was an appropriate amount given the current vacancies in town and what we feel we can rent in a reasonable amount of time. And given some of the other site constraints, space for the Civic Plaza, we had to carve that out of York, and that's really the only appropriate area for retail is the ground floor along York. You're not going to really find another space on the site for the retail. So that's really all the site's going to allow, given some of the constraints, especially carving out the Civic Plaza. To answer your second question, the goal of the parking is that we are providing 113 public parking spaces. We are assuming in our proposal that we would receive 22 parking permits from the city in exchange for paying all the operating costs of the public parking deck. That's what we're envisioning in terms of the parking needs without knowing what the retail users are going to be.
Okay, well, we're a little bit over 45 minutes, but that allowed them to finish their last answer. So again, I'd like to thank the Morningside Group for all of their information and their participation. And according to the memo that we did send out, Jupiter Realty Group is next, and we have them listed at 9.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? We'll take a 5-minute break and allow the other group to set up and get ready to go. So we'll shoot for 9 o'clock on the button, as we stated in our memo to the Jupiter Group. Thank you. Okay, our second presentation of the evening is by the Jupiter Realty Corporation. And I would invite you to come to the microphone and introduce yourself and start your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to present this evening. This is our first time presenting in Elmhurst, and we welcome the opportunity with open arms. Jupiter Realty, for those of you that don't know much about the company, is a company that was established a long time ago in the early 1980s, and it is owned equally by myself and two partners. It has a long history of ownership, development, and property management that basically covers all different property types. Our platform has been in place and we operate nationally. As it relates to multifamily, there we go. You can see from the slide that we have either developed and or acquired and owned over 80 properties, which encompasses about 29,000 units that has been across the United States. We have formed our own management entity, Jupiter Communities. Basically, as we became more experienced in ownership of residential and operation of residential properties, it became clear to establish the right kind of property management quality and control we needed to incorporate our own. So we folded our own portfolio into one management company, and that management company today operates in 13 states. My two partners, Don Smith and Mike Pompisi, and I have been together for almost 30 years. Mike and Don have experience both as principals in commercial real estate as well as lenders. Don came from the Continental Bank here in Chicago. Michael ran the eastern half of the United States for Westinghouse. And my first experience in commercial real estate started in 1976 when I was living in Switzerland working for a Swiss trust company. We did commercial real estate investment internationally. And my experience has been in Switzerland, in Canada, and here in the United States. Our concept in our commercial real estate practice has been to identify opportunities which we could bring to bear our expertise and our technique in creating a solution to problems and to enhance what's there and create value and find solutions where they have been overlooked in prior years. We have had extensive experience, like I say, in all property types. We have done out-of-the-ground development of shopping centers, of residential buildings, office buildings, hotels, and industrial buildings. We have been, like everyone else in the commercial real estate industry, at the mercy of the oscillations in the markets. And we have been very opportunistic in where we have spent our time and efforts. In other words, when we find, for example, in downtown Chicago that perhaps the office market is suffering from softness, we will not spend our time there. We will spend our time in other areas. Go on to the next. Oops. Our team has capabilities in-house that touch all aspects of commercial real estate. We bring to bear the capabilities of putting together the appropriate financing. We put together the development team. We structure the deals, and we self-manage. Jupiter has had a commitment to commercial real estate for the entirety of its existence. And we have, over the years, participated not only in the real estate side, but we have also participated actively in the creation of real estate-related businesses. Jupiter Communities is the property management company that handles our residential portfolio and that of third-party clients. Hostmark Hospitality Group is a hotel management company that actually had its genesis within Jupiter quite a few years ago. It is operated primarily by the Cataldo family. We own a portion of that company. It operates today about 40 hotels here in the United States and has operated and continues to operate in Egypt, Canada, and the Caribbean. And I'm currently getting them involved in Brazil. PM Realty Group is a third-party commercial property management company that we acquired from the RTC in 1992. They're domiciled in Houston, Texas, and they operate about 110 million square feet of commercial real estate across the country. It's important for you all to understand one of the primary things that we pride ourselves on at Jupiter is relationships, long-term relationships with capital partners, both that have provided us debt as well as those that have provided us equity that have partnered with us. And our relationship with the institutions is something that has transcended decades. We have done many deals with many of the people here over and over and over. So we're relationship oriented, and we understand what that means, and we understand what that means when we approach a community, that there has to be a dynamic that we can work together in a public-private partnership. Now, obviously, we have no experience here in Elmhurst. However, what I would like to point out is the most recent development that we have completed, and that was in downtown Chicago. It was a challenge, as you can probably imagine, to put the site together, and we developed a 50-story high-rise building, 389 rental units, 600 parking spaces, and about 14,000 square feet of ground floor retail. That was a very good project because it encompasses a lot of the same elements, although at a different scale, that we will bring to bear here. In other words, identifying what needs must be met for the people that are going to reside there, how we distinguish that and create a building that will withstand the test of time and would be regarded as a Class A core asset by anyone judging the building. The development of this building, we didn't bring a lot of pictures to show, but it embodies the same kind of thing that we would do here. Basically, extremely high-grade finishes, an amenity package that was unique in the loop. And point of fact, this was the first LEED certified building that had been built in the loop ever. We are responsible developers, and we bring to bear many of the components that our target market demands. Major exercise facilities, ample bike storage, an amenity package on the top of the parking deck that basically is absolutely unique in downtown Chicago. And as you will see in our presentation, those same kind of features are brought to bear in what has been designed here. As it relates to additional suburban projects, we are currently working on a project with Clark Street and the Village of Oak Park. They have chosen us as the residential development for their Colt building there. It will be approximately 240 units, a mixture that we will establish exactly of studios, 1s, and 2 bedrooms. And there will be a parking deck with some street level retail, and it is really interesting because that is a transportation-oriented development. It's absolutely proximate to the rail tracks leading to the city. Now I'll turn it over to Terry Graber of Power.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'll be very brief. My name is Terry Graber, and I'm a principal with Power Construction Company. We are a Schaumburg-based general contractor that started in 1926 and have been very familiar with working on multifamily residences in and around the Chicagoland area. We've also been very fortunate to have worked in Elmhurst in the past, several years ago at the Elmhurst Public Library. We're very fortunate to have been part of Jerry's team for many, many years. In fact, we have close to a 15-year relationship and certainly understand how they work. And ultimately what we can bring to the table today is really understanding your neighborhood and your needs as it relates to the construction, making sure that we understand all of the important needs of the individual stakeholders, not only the neighbors, but also the retailers in the area. So we look forward to working with you all.
Good evening. My name is Steve Rezebek with Papa George Hames Architects. And I'm joined here tonight with Greg Klazowski, who's been an instrumental part of our team in putting together the design and the presentation for you tonight. Papa George Hames has a history of about 32 years of developing an extensive array of multifamily residential projects. We got our earliest start back in the 80s doing loft conversions and have been really for the past 30-some years working quite extensively in the multifamily and mixed-use markets. These projects range from townhome projects and mid-rise projects, which you see here on this slide, to large 65-story high-rise buildings such as the Museum Park Tower East project that overlooks Grant Park from the south. And there's been a lot of projects in between in terms of scale and complexity. As far as our mixed-use projects go, this is an example of a project we did in Chicago on Clark Street, just north of Wrightwood. This is the site of a former CTA bus maintenance facility. And as you can see, it has 3 stories of residential above a retail podium and stretches for the length of the block to the north here. This is another project that we did in the city in the Sauganash neighborhood on the north side. This is a project that has a Whole Foods store on the ground floor with 4 stories of residential above it. Again, parking is kind of tucked in, hidden from the street view into a podium on the second level. And one of our larger mixed-use projects in the area is the Glen Town Center on the site of the former Glenview Naval Air Base in Glenview. This was a terrific opportunity for us to really blend together our expertise in residential and retail development. And from this slide, you'll see that on one side of the street, the curved building is a 3-story over 1-story retail residential development, and our involvement also extended to the townhome clusters that flank the north and south ends of this development. These are some views, kind of a fisheye view taken from the center where they had preserved the original control tower hangar. Looking down the main vista between the residential retail components to the east, some views along the street. Some of the standalone commercial that flanks the higher trafficked Patriot Boulevard to the east. And then a great kind of a street level view along the retail sidewalks. And I think this slide illustrates our attention to detail in terms of blending together the amenities and the streetscape to complement the architecture and the commercial activities. Our reputation in the Chicago area has led us to other projects. This is the River Oaks project in Houston. This is a 300-unit residential development with 100,000 square feet of retail development on the ground floor with structured parking on the second floor. Some views along the streetscape. And in Atlanta, in the Buckhead neighborhood, we're working on a project called the Buckhead, which includes 400 units of residential in the 2 apartment towers that you see in the background, and then quite extensive array of commercial development in the foreground. So on to the proposal in Elmhurst. So this is a bird's eye view looking toward the southwest from a little bit east of York and North Avenue. And it illustrates the building in the context with the development along York Street and the immediately adjacent Panera and CVS store to the north. As you will see in subsequent slides, the building is organized around a cluster of courtyards, both public and private, with a large central courtyard in the center of the development. There's additionally a secondary courtyard on the north edge of the property bordering the alley that separates our development from the Panera Bread site. In terms of this is a site plan view, again showing that building in plan view within that context. So you can see retail development along York Street, residential entrance in the center, parking tucked in behind the development, so it's not really visible from the street. Then you can see along Addison Street that we've proposed 9 three-story townhomes, really stepping down the scale and the density of the development to maintain the character of the buildings that exist on Addison Street. This is more of a street-level perspective taken from the same vantage point, showing a little more detail of the development in this north alley headway that we're proposing, as well as kind of the inviting entrance into the central plaza. I think this view will illustrate the many of the materials that we're proposing to use on the building. We are drawing from the palette of materials that you see on many of the buildings further to the south along York Street. This includes brick, stone, metal-clad bays, but the use and fenestration of these materials is organized in a more contemporary aesthetic. You can see larger windows, larger glass to provide ample light and natural ventilation to the dwelling units, balconies to provide private outdoor space, articulation of the facade through the use of color, material, balcony placement to break down the mass and scale of the building. Emphasis of the building corner to address and make a gesture toward the important intersection of North and York, just to the north of the site. Expansive storefronts at ground level offer an engaging and highly visible commercial experience. And finally, all of these materials require very little maintenance, ensuring that the project will enhance its value for years to come. So spend a little more time here describing the development of the site all the way around all 4 sides. So along York Street, we have set back the buildings so that we can enlarge the sidewalk and maintain what the city is developing as their enhanced streetscape program. This offers the ability to provide tree plantings, have a carriage walk immediately adjacent to the curb, offers space for street furnishings such as bicycle racks, bench seating, and so forth along the site, and provide more relief in terms of the sidewalk width for the pedestrian experience along York Street. At the center of the development is a large public plaza, and it's been created to serve several functions. It provides access to the public parking through this opening at the back of the retail. It also serves as the main entrance for the residential lobby for the 209 units and their residents and guests. And it also serves as a adjacent space for the commercial development to flow into and extend outdoors, as well as any program functions that the city deems appropriate for, what would be a dedicated outdoor plaza space. The plaza is flanked by 2 residential arcades that extend and wrap back into to the plaza. And we also believe the size and scale of the plaza strikes an important balance between maintaining the street wall along York Street and providing significant public open space. You can see in red that the commercial development is fronted on York Street. There's 14,000 square feet of retail to the south of the plaza and 5,000 square feet of commercial space to the north, which we've suggested here would be ideal for a restaurant use. Together, we have 19,000 square feet of commercial development at the ground floor. The public parking behind at grade comprises 180 units. This makes up the 100 parking spaces that the city is looking for and it serves for the commercial development that we're proposing, as well as potential parking for residents' guests.
Good.
The north edge of the development, you can see that the building wing on the north edge has a slight cant to it, and we've used this feature to create an additional public open space on the north side of the building. And we've made a suggestion here as far as how the alley can be developed to become an extension of that plaza and also serve to connect our development to the existing Panera Bread and CVS development. So we propose use of distinctive paving treatment and extending that actually to the west as a pedway to the neighborhood along Addison Avenue. The south edge of the property is the primary entrance for the public parking. It also serves as access to the loading spaces, which would serve both the residential and the retail developments. And then, as mentioned previously, along the west edge, we've developed that with townhome development that we feel best fits the character of Addison Street and provides a nice buffer between the larger scale development that fronts on York Street. This is a view, kind of a vignette view of the central courtyard, and you can see we've enhanced the space with amenities, both in-ground plantings, raised planters, very decorative and kind of interesting geometry to the pavement patterns. And we see it as being a very active space with the public parking served through here, as well as the residents and their guests. And here you get a glimpse of the arcades that flank the two sides, wrapping back into the courtyard. It's a vignette view of the north courtyard, where we've suggested outdoor seating for the proposed restaurant use, and how this really flows and can extend into the adjacent Panera, where they have a fairly limited outdoor seating area now, and we've actually taken the liberty of suggesting some minor modifications to the organization of their parking and where some of their drive aisles exit out into the alleyway here to further enhance this environment. Residential parking is located in the basement and is accessed from a separate entrance on the north alleyway to the west. We've also proposed a stormwater detention vault in some of the leftover unexcavated space to help with the stormwater issues in Elmhurst. The typical residential floor is organized in a modified E-shape. You can see here the two courtyards that would be located above the parking deck, with the larger of the two courtyards housing pool, fire pit, outdoor grilling areas, seating areas, and being really the more active of the two outdoor courtyards, yet maintaining a landscape buffer between those activities and the residential units that occur around the perimeter at this level. The courtyard to the north is smaller and would be developed for more quieter activities. At the fifth floor, which is the upper floor of the building, only a portion of the wing extends to this height, forming kind of a T-shaped wing. This offers further opportunities for amenities for the residents, with an outdoor deck area here that would have nice views to the south and the east. And this is again a kind of an axon overview and highlights some of the sustainable features that we believe would be very attainable in the project, such as native species landscapings. You can see We've proposed a good portion of our roof deck area to be a green roof. This helps again with managing stormwater because you don't have as much runoff when you have a green roof. We can incorporate rain gardens around the perimeter of the site where we have paved areas that can drain into some of the landscape buffers and filter the water before it makes its way into the sanitary system. We have a great deal of open space. The central courtyard is just under 20,000 square feet, or the central courtyard in conjunction with the north courtyard and some of the setback area comprises just under 20,000 square feet of public open space. Permeable paving in the courtyard, as we've carefully not extended the basement underneath there so we can allow for permeable pavers to handle some of the stormwater and let that filter naturally into the ground. Green roofs, which I've mentioned, solar thermal collectors on the roof. Where we do have exposed roof area, it would be highly reflective to minimize the urban heat island effect that can be created with dark roof surfaces. Energy efficient glazing, energy efficiency really throughout the building in terms of the building envelope, the appliances, the plumbing fixtures, and the HVAC equipment that goes into the building. The building would have a recycling program for the residents to segregate their trash and encourage as much recycling as possible. And then the interior materials that would be used throughout the building would be what we call low VOC materials, and essentially these are materials which minimize the off-gassing that you often get with manufactured materials, kind of that new car smell, which sounds great, but it's really not good for you. So that's what this would incorporate. So I believe with that, we can open this up to questions, and we'll be here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank your entire team, Mr. Riesebeck. I hope I pronounced that correct. I'll let the city council know at this point we actually have, looks like 16 minutes, so we have a little more time on this one to ask any questions we may have. That having been said, I will go to Alderman Gutenkopf first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, I have several questions, and I'm not quite sure where to start. I think these two issues for me are somewhat related, so I'll try to form them into a coherent question. This project is in the ward I represent, so I'm particularly sensitive to the needs of existing residents. Some of them happen to live in the townhomes that are adjacent to this property. I noticed that you're proposing 9 adjacent townhomes, but one of the ways the current townhome residents access their parking is on the existing Hahn Street right-of-way. I recognize that the property line is currently, their property line ends at the Hahn Street right-of-way, but it's been a concern in the past, how are they going to get to their parking? The other alley is somewhat restrictive and has been a concern for them. And my corollary to this question then is also the pedestrian headway on the other side of the property. It looks to me like it's not solely designated pedestrian. It looks to me like you're providing egress from the Panera parking lot as well as ingress to your parking down that pedway, and how would we manage to keep that pedestrian friendly if what I expect it turns into kind of an automobile cut through?
Okay. I'll try to answer your questions. We were not aware of the limitations of the alley to the south of our proposed townhomes in terms of providing access to the existing townhomes. We've actually proposed similar access to our nine townhomes off of the northern alley. And while we don't show those two drives connected, there's the potential that they can both be connected to create through access to both alleys. So I'm not sure if the issues that they're having are because of some of the activity that occurs in the south alley, but we can certainly work with the city of Elmhurst in figuring out the best solution. And it was our initial reaction to not provide a curb cut off of Addison, where the former Hahn Street was. But if we feel that that's an important element to maintain, we can certainly work with you on that. And you, with regard to the alley to the north, you are correct. It is not proposed as a dedicated pedestrian way. What we're suggesting, and we'd obviously again have to work with the city and with the owners of the development to the north, is that perhaps the service use of that alleyway could be timed and organized in such a way that during the daytime hours, there's less activity from the service vehicles. I think the parking area at the Panera has other opportunities for access in and out, but if they need to maintain access to that alley, I think we can certainly accommodate it. We just see this alleyway as an opportunity to not isolate this development, but allow it to connect and flow into the development to the north, so that somebody using the commercial development that we're proposing can simply walk along a protected path and continue on to the walkway that's immediately in front of CVS and Panera without having to traverse through the parking lot to get to those stores.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Levin?
I just have a couple questions. The first one is, are the plans that you reviewed tonight have they been submitted to us, these drawings and the renderings?
Yes. They should be on board docs, correct, Mike Kopp? Look into the back.
They're on board docs.
Under the, okay.
All right, they weren't in the supplemental pack, or?
Yes, in the bound, Alderman Levin in the bound one, Pine Street amended proposal.
Okay, maybe that's one I don't have. I have supplemental and original. The other questions I have are more substantive. I see you have a whole list of projects that you've worked on that are very varied, from Carl Sandburg Village and et cetera, but I'm trying to see if I can get a handle on what projects has the team worked on together, and secondly, what kinds of projects similar to this has Jupiter done, because the list of different real estate projects doesn't delineate between what you've managed, what you've rehabbed, what you've been a broker for, et cetera.
Well, all the projects on that list, we have either developed or acquired and redeveloped. It covers the history of our corporate experience in residential real estate. As it relates to answering your specific question about the team, this is the first time we are working with Papa George. However, the most recent development that we completed in the city is the 215 West Washington development, and Power was our contractor. And I'm happy to say that it was a very significant financial commitment for myself and my partners. And with the Power team, we were able to bring that project in on time and under budget. And I'm also happy to say that as far as the investment community, the lending community is concerned, they were quite elated with the results of that delivery. And what was more, the project leased to our timeframes and at the rates we had predicted. So we're very, very comfortable working with Power. And Papa George has an extremely distinguished track record in and of itself. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I mean, Papa George does have a very distinguished record. I'm sure everyone's aware of them. What project would you say is most similar to, for instance, the Clark Street CTA bus barn replacement? Is that one that you guys did, as you were the developer on that one?
No, we were not. That was one of your clients, but I don't remember who that was. I believe that was Enterprise. That was Enterprise Development. That was not Jupiter. So the projects that you saw that were suburban projects that look visually similar were projects that Papa George has done that we have not been involved with.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Any additional questions at this time? Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
couple questions that struck me, or a couple of the things that struck me early in the presentation, and then looking in the packet, talks about Jupiter Realty's buying property, renovating property, and then eventually selling property.
Yes.
A couple of the direct quotes from the principals were, you work hard for the buy so you can makes the sell easier. I'd assume that Jupiter Realty will build it, turn it over to Jupiter Communities
To manage it, yes.
Does Jupiter Communities manage any development that is not owned by Jupiter Realty?
Absolutely. They are a bona fide third-party manager, absolutely.
Okay, so even if Jupiter really decided to sell off this development at some point, Jupiter Communities would potentially still manage it?
I would like to think so, but let's be very, very clear. The property management business is extremely competitive, and if you were to buy that property from me, and the mayor happened to have a property management company that you had used in the past, and you competitively bid for the property management assignment, may the best man win. And if you have experience, typically you will go back to that firm with whom you've had a prior working experience. So it's not a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination.
Then I'll ask the more direct question.
Sure.
Would it be Jupiter Realty's intention, I mean, I know I can't pin you down on this, but is the intention to spin it off at some point, or when the value is right, turn it, or do you look at this as a long-term investment?
The answer, and I'm not trying to spin it, is kind of a hybrid. In every single deal, whether we develop it or acquire it, there's a business plan that is put into place. And typically that foresees an investment being made on day one, and to try and quantify the economic benefit to us for doing that, we project a period of time of our ownership, which may be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and we anticipate at some point at the end of our business plan that there will be a capital event. What does that mean? That means we may sell it or we may refinance it. And to the extent that we sell it, the result is obvious. To the extent that we refinance it, we stay with the property. Is that, Mr. Healy?
It does answer the question. So
Okay.
then, not for this specific project per se, but in a project of this size, what is that window? 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, that when you put the business plan together, that this capital event is how far in the future?
Without getting into a protracted discussion on what's happening in the capital markets today, suffice to say that we're looking at typically 7 years now.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions, or any other questions, I should say? Alderman Bram. Oh, for the record, I don't own a real estate management company. Bram.
Yeah, a few questions. One of which during the presentation, it was mentioned about public parking spaces being a total of 180, I believe. There's some conflicting information in the supplemental info that we have here. One, the actual drawing showing 180, but then some of the, and I forgot where, some of the figures showing 162. Yeah. So if you can clarify for me, is it 180 or is it 162?
No, that's a hard question, so I have somebody here that can answer that.
I thought that was my easy question.
We were able to take another look at the layout of the parking on the ground floor in the interim, and we're able to make it a little more efficient and dedicate more space for public parking. So we thought, why not? Why not provide some additional parking?
So you're saying the correct number should be 180 public?
That's correct.
Okay. Next question is, for your proposal, you have 3 different types of units, being studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom. How do I phrase this question? Why do you see that there would be a need in the downtown Elmhurst area? What clientele would be wanting to rent studio apartments?
From what we've studied in the market, there's a need for people who are 1 and 2 person families. And they usually rent the smaller areas or the smaller studios, which are more affordable because rents today are just very, very high. And so they rent those until they can afford a home, is the truth.
When you see that demand being in the western suburbs?
We've seen
aka
it
Elmhurst?
take place, yes. No, we've seen it take place, and I think that Morningside has seen it in 121, and I think that the other new property, Event at the Arboretum, has also seen it. Either studios or very small ones.
Okay. The last question being in regards to the architectural design itself. What was shown tonight was more of a contemporary design. How do you see that blending into our current architecture in downtown Elmhurst?
We believe this would be viewed by potential residents and commercial retail tenants as a very exciting and distinctive development along the York Street commercial strip in Elmhurst. And we believe it's a little bit forward-thinking, but it still carries forward some of the vestiges of the character of buildings further to the south and provides a nice transition to what is really this project, this development will be unique along this section of York Street. I think you have to go all the way down to the Crescent Court development to see other buildings of this scale. But this building obviously incorporates the commercial development as well as the residential, and so for that reason has a different feel and aesthetic, especially at the street level.
Thanks. And just a statement is that I do applaud the fact that what is presented, at least for this design, is close to 20,000 square feet of retail. That's something that since Han has been discussed, at least myself, I wanted to see approximately 20,000 or plus square foot of retail. So I just want to applaud that.
Okay, we have about a minute left. Alderman Gutenkopf, I don't think Alderman Leader's had a chance to speak. I'm going to allow him to pose, I'm guessing, the last question of the evening. Alderman Leader.
I just wonder if you have a condo exit strategy.
No, we do not.
Thank you.
I think we can squeeze one more in.
I think that we should explain that just a little bit more. It's just that we personally don't exit, we don't sell condos. It's not that we wouldn't sell it to a condo converter for them to exit.
Alderman Gutenkopf, a quick question, yes?
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to compare financials across all the proposals. It's very difficult because they all kind of look different. I do have a question about your projected sales tax income for the first year. It's pretty high. It's considerably higher than what we're seeing from the others. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Well, we got our projection numbers from CBRE, is who we talked to, and they were saying it's about $350 per square foot for sales in a regular retailer, and then about $500 for a restaurant. And so we averaged it over what we thought the type of mix we would have, and that's what we came up with when we applied it to the city tax.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. We are just over 45 minutes. Also want to thank you for your time and appreciate you coming out here and keeping your presentation to 45 minutes along with the Q&A. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Levin.
In talking to Alderman Deuter, I see that Alderman Plumsky and I don't have all the information. I don't know if other aldermen realize it, but it appears there are a stack of pull-out drawings for this project, and if we can get copies of those, they're not in the books we received.
Certainly.
We can provide more of those. We'll drop
Well,
them.
I'm certain we have extra copies, so we'll rectify it if there's any issues. And they're also on board docs, but we'll get you printed ones as well.
Board docs. Deliver board docs to my house, and I'll...
I'm right there with you, Alderman Levin.
All right.
Before we wrap this up, thank you very much. Before we wrap this up, I was talking to City Manager Grabowski. I think I'd like to, I think it's important that we, and I wanted to do this at the very beginning, but I'd forgotten to, so I didn't want to do it in between the presentations. But City Manager Grabowski has a rough timeline and expectation to help us go through this and narrow it down. So before we adjourn, I'd ask City Manager Grabowski to give us what we're shooting for on this in terms of timing.
Thank you. In your packet that was delivered last week, you should have received a scoring sheet that looks like this. If you recall, a number of months ago, as we put the RFP out, we talked about the scoring and the percentages and the rankings. We would like to receive those back from the aldermen by next Monday, the 16th. So that we can compile that, and in talking to Mayor Morley, possibly call a committee of the whole meeting on the 23rd after committees, so that we can continue this discussion with the scoring rankings, and the council can narrow it down to some finalists from there.
Yes, Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think I'd just like to speak to this process a little bit. So, based on these presentations and without benefit of having the opportunity to really discuss this, you'd like us to rank what we're hearing. I'm feeling like I have a lot of other questions that this time frame isn't allowing us to really get at, and that I would benefit from conversation before I even begin to rank these. I don't feel prepared to assign numbers even to the two presentations we've heard today. I think there's just an awful lot more that we need to talk about, and I'm not sure I understand what benefit it would serve for me to rank these and throw it into a pile without benefit of more conversation.
Okay, so the plan that City Manager Grabowski laid out was that, and I think we're all aware, I didn't hear any objection or misunderstanding on the rankings. That's something that the council went over quite a bit. The plan that City Manager Grabowski laid out would ask the aldermen to use their score sheet, and then we would tally it up, and then we would have a subsequent conversation after all of the presentations have happened, and we would, bounce thoughts and ideas off each other. What I'm hearing, the one twist I'm hearing in that from Alderman Gutenkopf is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying you'd rather have the opportunity to openly discuss with your fellow aldermen before you apply rankings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly what I would prefer. I think it would give at least me more time to really understand the proposals and get a sense of where they're going before I begin to try to apply the ranking to them. I think the ranking is what we want to do. Don't get me wrong. And the score sheet is what I expected it would be, but I'd prefer to have the conversation first.
Okay. Anybody else care to opine about that portion of the process? Alderman Dunn.
Well, if memory serves me right, I think this is a multi-phase evaluation process. We have a initial group of 5 candidates, and I think the initial evaluation is going to allow us to narrow that down to a select few where subsequent evaluations are going to take place. Is that basically how it will work?
Yeah, the process as it was laid out does actually allow for some interpretation or flexibility. In the RFP that was sent out, laid out on page 16 is a 6-stage process, and we're really at the we're between phase 3 and 4, 3 being public presentation and interview of candidates by mayor and city council, and then 4, mayor and city council review and select finalists. And that's really what the this ranking sheet was supposed to do, just help us focus. I don't tend to disagree if it's the will of the council and the will of the council wants to have some interactive conversation before we ultimately turn in our grading sheets. I don't think it's necessarily something that has to happen before the next phase. So I would say that certainly we all are aware we have 3 presentations tomorrow. I think we can stick with, where's the calendar, Jim? I think we can stick with, regardless of whether or not we have the grading sheets in, we can stick with a committee of the whole on the 23rd. I don't see any objections to that. So assuming we're okay with that, at some point, we obviously have to use the grading sheet to narrow it down, but Alderman Mulliner.
I kind of support the idea of doing the grading sheet right off the bat because it may immediately narrow down our focus and our discussion to potentially, maybe it will be all 5, but it may all of a sudden say we're down to 3 and be able to focus our discussion a little bit tighter. So I have no problem with doing that as an initial process just to get that focused for us so that we're actually focused on 1 or 2 projects rather than all 5. Now, it may be that it's all 5, but at least it'll give us an opportunity to see if there's 1 or 2 that should fall out and we should just move on with a few others.
City Manager Grabowski wanted to add.
Yeah, it wasn't our intent to eliminate any of them through the scoring, through the initial scoring, but at least have an idea of where they kind of rank among the council. And there may be a significant gap between some of them where that would be noticeable, but it wasn't our intent to eliminate any of the 5 for the initial council discussion, only to get a feeling for where everyone sits on it.
Alderman Levin.
I think it would make sense to do the initial grading first, and with the understanding that we're not selecting the final 2 candidates or 3 candidates. We're just trying to get a feel without polling everyone on the council for what they see. And if some clarity appears, that's fine. And if there's reevaluation later on, that's fine. But I would like to get at least the first cut non-binding, have evaluation turned in.
So just so I'm, just to clarify or to make sure I understand, you would be in favor of doing a quick ranking after tomorrow night's presentations and provide those to city staff for summarization within a week?
Yeah, yes, and doesn't mean we couldn't re-rank them later after there's been some discussion, as Alderman Gutenkopf has suggested, but at least to see where we are in first cut.
Alderman Bram.
I guess I might go along with Alderman Levin's comments if there was some additional clarity. I always appreciate my colleagues' questions and remarks, and sometimes on the dais it's changed my minds and my perceptions of how I view things on some of these issues. So I need clarity, I guess, on what it means by first pass on doing the rankings and then a secondary pass. I was under the understanding of the rankings, if you would, of this criteria would assist, if not determine, the finalist. So I guess where are we going with doing a first pass of these rankings and then a secondary pass? How does it serve the city as well as the council?
1 second.
Okay. As a council, you may decide to do that.
Okay. I was just clarifying something with City Attorney Nick Peppers. And Alderman Bram, I shared with you earlier in the evening, in my business, with the RFP process, what typically happens, my experience has been that we set as rigid a standards as possible in the RFP, and we ask the folks to submit to stick to those as close as possible. And then after that happens, I don't want to say all bets are off, but there's a certain amount of flexibility that's allowed, which is what we're discussing here tonight. Alderman Bram, I think that the proposal that Alderman Levin threw out there is a little off what's currently written in the RFP, but what I'm hearing suggested is we could do a first blush ranking from all the aldermen after tomorrow's meeting, and then if we want to do a regrade after we hear other people's opinion, we could certainly do that, and that can be in the next meeting or so as a follow-up. So that's what I'm hearing. Certainly, will of council is what we can do.
I understand that is what he stated. I guess I'm not seeing the point in doing 2 gradings. If we're going to do 2, why don't we just do 1 after question or things are discussed? I'm just trying to understand the point of doing both, an initial and a final.
Okay, Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. The reality is there's 15 of us up on here on the dais, and there's going to be 15 ways of looking at things. I tend to side with Alderman Mulliner and Alderman Levin that I don't need a lot. I'm going to look at that and do it with what I think. However, I respect the fact that other aldermen might want to have a little Q&A before they have to rank. I would suggest we stick with the original plan, but whether it's at the end of the day tomorrow, maybe not because it'll be kind of late, or sometime Monday, we schedule in, put in the agenda, a discussion about the 5 presentations, so that if that helps other aldermen do their ranking, so be it. I think we can work with the proposed schedule, not do multiple rankings, to allow for aldermen that want to ask questions, to ask questions before they have to hand their ranking in. I think we should be able to work that out.
Okay, Alderman Healy, you're proposing that we meet earlier than the 23rd.
Or build, maybe not, well, we've got a regular meeting next Monday. Put on the agenda for next Monday, Han Street discussion, just so that if, whether it's Alderman Gutenkopf or some other alderman wants to ask some more questions.
I understand what you're saying. My initial concern would be, I know projects are overlapping, but we're actually discussing Addison that night. And I think that's a lot to bite off. I think one big project tonight is probably.
Sit around for years.
Alderman Healy.
I don't disagree, but the reality is these 2 big projects are going to be overlapping for the next several months. So whether we want to talk about both in one night, I think we should be able to accommodate that. I don't know how much question and answer there actually would be, but for those aldermen that wanted to ask questions before they ranked them, they'd be given that opportunity.
Okay. I'm hearing 3 proposals at this point. I'd like to narrow down to 1. I hear 1, let's discuss, and at a later date, let's grade. 1, let's grade right tomorrow. And 1 that says, let's move up the meeting and grade a little earlier. Alderman Mulliner.
I will go along with Alderman Healy's suggestion. I think it's a very good suggestion. I know it's a lot to bite off, I understand that, but I agree. We've got 2 big projects that we need to focus on, and we need to figure out what we're going to do. So if we need, a half an hour to talk about one of them, and then we move on to the other one, let's do that, and let's get this thing moving. So I have no problem with that for next Monday.
Alderman Levin.
I concur with what Alderman Mulliner said. If we want to have discussion first and then vote, that I can go along with that.
Okay, Alderman Healy, would you summarize for me, or for the council?
Yes, what I said
what
5
we're doing
minutes
next
ago.
week on the 16th?
I would suggest that on the agenda for the 16th, we just make an agenda topic, Han Street, simple as Han Street Q&A, whatever you want to call it, so that any alderman that wished to ask a question or to get clarification could do so. And then we would go back to the original proposed timeline of turning in rankings by.
So the idea would be after the meeting?
Correct.
To be, okay.
Correct. And those aldermen that wanted to turn in rankings, I heard Alderman Mulliner, Alderman Levin said, hey, they're ready to, that they'd be ready to turn in rankings without that. Those aldermen that were so inclined could turn their rankings in. Those aldermen that wanted to have a little Q&A, get things clarified, could do so, whether it was after that meeting or by Tuesday or by Wednesday, they could do so. And then we could still have the committee of the whole meeting on I think I heard the 23rd, and then everybody will have been given the chance.
All right, give me 1 second. And this would fall into that. Which means, Alderman Healy, 1 second, Alderman Gutenkopf. I think the intent for next Monday was to do a committee of the whole for Addison, and I would just suggest that we add 2 items to the committee of the whole instead of, okay. So Alderman Healy is thrilled with that idea. Alderman Levin.
Just so we keep it straight, because I think we should be, Alderman Healy's suggesting, well, you can turn it in if you want, and you don't have to, you can turn it. I think we ought to just say we're going to have the Q&A and then turn them in as Alderman Gutenkopf suggested. Otherwise, people are turning them in. What do you do when you turn them in? Are they shared with the council? Or if you turn them in, can you change them? If we're going down this road, I'd say, let's have the Q&A and then require the aldermen to submit their evaluations within a couple of days after, and then we're all on the same program.
Okay. Alderman Gutenkopf.
I actually have a question. So when we have this big discussion and we bring up questions, are we going to have additional opportunities to ask questions of the applicants? Because I can foresee that the kinds of questions we're going to bring up could very well be the kind that we won't be able to answer ourselves. And that's part of why I think it's really important for us to have a discussion as a group, just to make sure that we're all kind of evaluating the same sorts of things and looking at the same pieces of the puzzle. It always, as Alderman Bram said, helps me to understand, that I'm actually making these rankings based on information and not just kind of a gut feeling. So
I understand what you're saying, Alderman Gutenkopf. It's kind of a slippery slope in terms of how far do we go in terms of making a ranking and a decision, or at least an initial decision based on the information we have in front of us, and how often do we bring the developers in and ask them specific questions?
I mean, I can imagine that we'll have a conversation, we'll have questions we won't be able to answer, that perhaps we're going back to the developers with with our written questions so that they have an opportunity to respond to that. I'm not saying that I want to hold up this process, but part of that discussion could be, well, they should have provided that answer, they didn't. How does that affect the way you're going to score them?
I think we're getting in a little bit into the hypothetical. I think that we kind of got everyone to agree to a meeting next week. Let's go with the initial conversation bouncing off each other, and I think maybe we'll tackle at that time, if and when we decide we need additional information, how we go about doing that in a manner that's equal to all the people that have submitted.
And
So,
just for the record, I think a meeting next week is going to be a very long one, and it will be a very difficult conversation for us to do, just for the record.
noted for the record. Any additional conversation before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Palumsky with a motion, Alderman Levin with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.